Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Mary Ann Hensley. I'm the Vice President of Media Operations for FreightWaves, and we are happy to present today's webinar in partnership with Front. Today, you'll be hearing insights from Front's Riley Ford, Corporate Account Executive, and David Ma, Mid-Market Account Executive, who will be discussing how to prevent communication bottlenecks, improve response times, and create exceptional experiences for your customers. We'll also have a live Q&A with Riley and David following the discussion, so make sure to come prepared with your questions for them. And before we get started, just a couple of quick items. First, if you have any issues during the webinar on the technical side of things, you can reach out to our team via the audience chat function in your webinar console. And as questions arise that you would like to ask our presenters, you can enter those through the Q&A box in your console, and we'll answer as many of those as possible during the live audience Q&A following the presentation. We will also be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar tomorrow in case you'd like to view it on demand or share it with your colleagues. And at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to Riley and David to kick off the discussion. Great to have you guys here today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We're super excited to be here. And again, like you mentioned, we're really going to be talking about how to prevent communication bottlenecks during the holiday rush. Super exciting stuff. We have a packed agenda today, but we'll kick it off with some introductions first, an overview of Front, and then really breaking it down, some of the ways that we think we can prevent some of those bottlenecks, and then some Q&A at the end. So a quick introduction of myself. My name is Riley Ford, and I'm an account executive here at Front. I've had the pleasure of working with logistics teams for the last 4 years globally, here in the US, Canada, Australia, UK, you name it. And a little plug, my favorite logistics podcast is What the Truck. Love the Dune the Dooner, so super excited to be here today. I'll kick it over to David.
Whoops. And it turns out I don't know how to navigate slides. I guess it's not my first rodeo, but my name is David Ma. Most people at Front, as well as some of the customers that I work with, are welcome to call me D-Ma. So if that's how you'd like to address me, you're welcome to. I've been at Front for 2.5, now almost 3 years. And like Riley, I've also worked with logistics customers up and down, up and throughout the country. And my little fun fact is when I was in college and as a grad school student, I tried to start a company doing effectively logistics and moving, and I was just in U-Haul trucks driving around all the time. So this is a topic very close to my heart. I'll pass it back over to Riley. Since we're sponsors of this event, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are as a company and our product, and then we'll get into the tactical details.
Love it. Thanks, David. Again, so what is Front? What have we been up to for these last 4 years or 3 years for David? So Front is a customer communication platform that helps teams scale while keeping their customers happy. So how we do that is we help teams automate some workflows that they traditionally had manually processed. We help them organize messages across all different channels. And then we also enable collaboration directly within the platform. Layering on top of that data and insights to ensure that you can reach your customers, keep them happy, and then make better business decisions for the future. Really what we want to do is help you build lasting customer relationships that scale with your current customers and then grow your customer base without the trade-offs of losing personalization. It's really important to have that white glove experience for all your customers long-term. And ultimately, this is all going to drive revenue growth. But what does that really mean, and how can we help you visualize that? So you'll see here, I'm sharing my screen, and this shows sort of a snapshot of what Front looks like. So it centralizes all of your communication channels in one place, but still has the familiarity of an email inbox. So not reinventing the wheel for your team. We're going to layer on the SLA warnings, so ensuring that your team is responding to the right messages at the right time and prioritizing those emails that matter most. Additionally, we layer on assignments and ownership. So rather than people having to raise their hand or saying nose goes when it comes to emails, every single person knows exactly who's handling what at what time. And then lastly, too, we again enable collaboration so your team can work behind the scenes to best serve your customers. So that's a little bit about Front, but I'll pass it over to David again to break it down.
All right, thank you. So now that the Riley's wonderful commercial about Front is over, we'll talk a little bit about the topic at hand here, which is communication bottlenecks. And just to set the stage a little bit, why are we a company that works with communication, email, chat, phone, talking to you all, who are experts in the logistics industry? And when we really think about this topic, what we're talking about is how do we get your cargo, your shipments, your products to your customers? And really the bottleneck oftentimes is communication. You can only move as fast as the emails coming in and going out to coordinate all the work that needs to be done. And that's where we believe as a company, we have a unique sort of perspective on how to do that. So given that we're a communications company, we've actually done a ton of research on what does the market desire or look for when it comes to effective communications. And so we actually worked with the Harvard Business Review on a study to understand what is the impact of communications. And so a lot of people that we talk to, they're like, it's just email, like how important can email be? But if you really, really think about it, email is valuable. A missed email can mean dollars. It can mean a shipment not happening. I had a customer that I worked with recently who said something ended up in storage when it wasn't supposed to, and it cost them $10,000 over a missed email, right? And so these things really do matter. And it reflects in the data that we found through this study. On this slide, you can see 93% of customers say that ensuring inquiries are addressed properly is important to their success. And that's not a surprise, right? Customer service matters. Every person who works in customer service knows that it matters, right? And so statistics prove that out. But on the flip side, 63%, so 2/3, say they don't actually have the right data or accessible to the employee at the right time when working with a difficult inquiry. So 2 out of 3 customer interactions don't have the right context to be able to help the customer in a timely manner. And then only 1/3 of organizations actually say that they're good at communicating internally, all the back and forth that has to happen to help resolve a customer inquiry. And so there's a disconnect here, right? The math basically proves out, on one hand, yes, this is incredibly important to us, but on the other hand, we're not doing it right. And so that's what really we're here to talk about. And especially as you all think about the busy season, which I know is probably already in full swing as people are getting shipments earlier and earlier, the volume is only going to ramp up, and the consequences of not handling communication well are only going to grow. And so before we head into the actual tactics that we're going to talk about, I'll leave you all with one note. And I think everybody who's been an executive or who works at a business understands the difference between important versus urgent. You may not think of your emails as the most urgent problem worth solving, but I think the data on this slide really proves out that it's an important one worth solving. And it's the kind of thing where you set the foundation right, you can set it and forget it, and you'll be able to help your customers at a much faster and better rate. So with that, I'll pass it over to Riley, who will go through our first tactical piece of advice.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Yeah, and I agree. Everyone knows there's a problem, but they don't always find it most important or urgent to fix. But I think we can really address some of the challenges that all the teams that we work with are facing. So I think one of the key things that you can do coming into the holidays is actually reduce your email volume and load there. And I know this sounds like, how would we do that, especially as we're ramping up into the holidays? But from talking to a lot of our customers and just within the industry, it's really practice to have a ton of different distribution groups, for instance, quotes at, operations at, customer A at email address. That goes to your entire team. And while this initially, when you first get started, seems like a good practice because there's visibility across the team with certain emails coming in, it ends up creating duplicate emails and a lot of extra work for the team. And then as you ramp up with more and more distribution groups and then more employees, it really can become true chaos. So while your teams are growing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to add more and more distribution groups. What you need to do is actually transition those distribution groups into a shared inbox model. And this is possible in a lot of different tools. So rather than a single email coming in and getting dispersed to hundreds of people on your team, a single email can come in and then get routed to someone on your team, which I think is really helpful. We actually had a customer, Estes Forwarding Worldwide, who was using over 100 different distribution lists to support their customers. And they did transition to French shared inbox. and they're able to reduce email volume by almost 80% across their team, which is around 700 emails a day. So imagine every single person no longer having to read, triage, archive, tag, folder, all of those different emails. They were able to better support the customers. So now when they're ramping up for the holidays, they're going to be set up for success long term. Obviously, you might not have the time to implement something today, but at a bare minimum, we'd say to prioritize some of these tagging systems, ensure that you're prioritizing the most important emails, and definitely insisting that you find other workflows to reduce some of the email volume there. So I'd say that's going to be a big key. If you can go into the holidays with a better system in place to reduce email volume, that will be a great first step. But then additionally, moving on to another tactical thing that you can really do to set yourself apart and be sort of an edge from your competitors is ensuring that emails don't slip through the cracks. I think David mentioned this. There was a $10,000, mishap with an email that lost, $10,000 for that single company. A single email can be tied to a load. It can be tied to a customer. It can be tied to actual money and dollars lost for the business, which is really, not something that you want to happen. So what we recommend is setting up SLA warnings in your communication path. So ensuring that you're prioritizing the emails that need to get handled first, and then also ensuring that emails don't slip through the cracks, because you get a warning at 15 minutes if it hasn't been responded. You get a warning at 30 minutes if it hasn't been responded. These are really great ways to ensure that no one's going to miss a holiday gift. No customer is going to reach out to you twice. You want to be the provider that is reaching out to your customers, not having them reach out to you. And there's so many things today in the industry that we cannot control. There's just a lot of things that aren't, within our control, which is a bummer. But what you can control is your communication style, your communication with your customers, and ensuring that you just don't miss any of the messages and you prioritize those. So M&X is one of our customers too, who's implemented SLAs consistently and has made sure that they don't miss any emails from their customers. And that gives them a competitive edge and a really great support system. Awesome. Well, those are my 2 points. I'll transition it back over to David here to jump in to talk a little bit more about this.
And I keep advancing the slide like I'm not supposed to, like an idiot. All right. So the next point that we're going to talk about is what we here at Front call don't treat your customers like a ticket. And on first glance, it's going to sound very obvious, like, yeah, don't treat your customers like a ticket. But I think you'd be surprised how many customers Riley and I have dealt with who have come to us saying, oh, yeah, like we're using like a Zendesk or like an autoresponder, right? And so, oftentimes a lot of what companies are doing today are, you guys are delivering Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it may be. If you have something that is going to be late, and the customer's asking, like, what's the deal with this major shipment? And your response is, hey, we'll get back to you in 12 hours. Please reply above the line. Here's a Zendesk ticket, your ticket number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The customer's really not going to like that. And that's what we're really focused on, is how can we bring a more tailored, personal, human approach during what's normally a really stressful time in the industry. And so our advice here is to be personal. It's to send thorough messages. It's to be warm. And it really stems from the fact that customer service, especially during this time of year, is a game of empathy. Chances are that you're going to have to deliver bad news sometime in the next few months. But if you do so with care, and instead of sort of a short, sort of terse or quick message, that's the things that your customers are going to remember. I think people aren't going to remember what you said, but how they made you feel. And so, if you respond like a robot, it can be the thing that sends a customer over the edge. It prevents them from wanting to work with you. You go to Google reviews, you can read all sorts of bad reviews of customer service. And so the goal during the holiday season is to not be that type of company, especially when the stakes are high. So how do we actually do this, right? What we usually recommend, and we see a lot of customers do this, is they have what's called a standard voice, or like a way in which they have standard language for how they respond to customers. And this is something that you have to train your team across, right? How to respond with empathy, how to make sure that you're understanding that their particular problems and how to not compound them and make them worse. The way in which people typically implement it from an operations perspective is they add this type of language to email templates. And so whether you're using Outlook, Gmail, or you just have a Word doc full of most common responses. This is something that you can do to standardize the language across your company and make sure that your entire customer base feels empathy when they're getting responses. We, of course, at Front have a message templates function, which we'd be remiss not to mention, but it's something that we can help with. And you'll see that customers like Sender, I think, actually migrated. I think they had a Zendesk implementation before they came to Front. And it's been a really helpful way for all of our customers to basically create a more personal relationship with their customers. All right. And then our last tactical insight. This one's actually one that's really close to my heart. So before I was working directly with customers, I actually used to work in operations. And so much of my life was spent crunching the numbers and figuring out how to improve the business. And if you're a manager, you're an executive at a company, you're thinking about growth, you're thinking about efficiency. And the most salient piece of advice anybody in operations ever gave me was, you cannot improve what you don't measure. Because then you're just flying blind. You're just throwing stuff at the wall. And so everyone knows that getting operational excellence it's a sort of continuous game. You can't win it, but you can always make iterations and do better. For the sports fans in the audience, every team these days is doing some version of sabermetrics, Billy Bean, baseball, and they have the numbers. And so in our industry, where you all are handling high stakes communications and they're flying across, having analytics on email on what's working well, how fast are you responding, when are the busiest times that you can staff accordingly, is the kind of data and insights and metrics that'll help you understand how to improve your business and how to manage it during the most stressful times like this time of the year. It's the kind of thing that can set your foundation right. It's the kind of thing that maybe can save you from having to hire extra employees when you don't need to. It's the kind of thing that can course correct and help you find errors before they actually happen. And so our belief is you've got to be data driven. It's an obvious insight, but hopefully this presentation gives a little bit of the insight onto why and then the how. So our how is most companies have either a CRM or a TMS or an analytics platform. If you haven't already, find someone on your team who's able to figure out how to get that data out of there and make sure you're understanding the key insights on things like response time. Again, we at Front would be remiss not to say that we have an analytics system built directly into our inbox that'll help you measure that sort of stuff, but you don't have to use us to get started. Data-driven mindset is a mindset, and it's something that every company should adopt, and we would be more than happy to help you all think about that. All right, so those are our 4 tactics. We will now turn it back over to Marianne for sort of navigating the Q&A, but we were so happy to be here today and so thrilled that people joined us to hear about our specific strategies for managing communication bottlenecks or preventing communication bottlenecks.
Awesome. Thank you, David and Riley. Some really great stuff and really important, just as we kind of think about getting back to the basics. No one wants to feel like they're just treated as a ticket or treated as a number, but really also emphasizing the importance of data and being able to measure is so critical. Thank you guys so much. We do have a few questions, so I would go ahead and I will like to go ahead and roll into those. If you have not already submitted your questions, you can do so through the Q&A box in your webinar console. First question that I have for you guys, what are some of the most common shared inboxes that logistics companies set up?
Riley, you want to take that? All right.
Yeah, I can grab that. So we've seen a lot of different shared inboxes, and I think one of the nice things about the way that Front set up is that there's a lot of flexibility, but we've seen that people really like, depending on the type of customer they work with, they could set up a direct customer inbox. So for instance, it could be, customer at mnxlogistics.com. That's really a primary use case that people are setting up. Then additionally, people like to do operations at, quotes at, intermodal at, those sort of specific ones for the type of department you might be reaching out to. So then it's really clear for the customer, like if they're going to someone about a quote or a request, anything like that, they would send it to that inbox. So those are the pretty common ones that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. David, do you see any others that I may have missed there?
I think the way that I always think about inboxes, and we see this both in logistics as across other industries, is there's really 4 types of inboxes. There's inbox by team, so operations at, finance at. There's inbox by customer XYZ at, Disney at, ESPN at, Trucking Co. 123 at. There's inboxes by process, so step 1 at, step 2 at, step 3 at. And then I'm missing one. What's the last one? I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's basically, by geo, which is, New York at, LA at, Chicago at. And we see this structure basically mirrored at almost every organization we work with. And there's no such thing as a right answer on that, but the general right answer is you have to give your teams visibility to these inboxes. And oftentimes we'll see that, they're just kind of a mess, and that's what we work with.
Yeah. And I'd say less is more sometimes. You don't need to start off by creating an inbox for every single process or every single team. It's about starting small and seeing that you can set up a few inboxes to make a big impact versus, creating too many. So, yeah.
All right.
What else do you got for us? Any other questions?
Yeah, let's see. What are the top integrations you see logistics teams connecting to front?
I can start. I think a very common one is you'll want to do something around your TMS or a CRM or something like that. And the way in which we've done that is we've had a lot of our customers come to us and say, I'm answering questions for XYZ customer, but I don't actually know anything about that customer or that particular order or that particular shipment when I'm responding. And I have to open up like a 3rd or 4th Chrome tab or Internet Explorer tab to view that data. And our goal has been to basically bring as much as that into front as possible. So whether we have the integration out of the box for something like a Salesforce, which a lot of customers use, or a TMS, which a lot of our customers have actually built custom integrations with, our goal has been basically to enable as much contextual information in the app as possible, all of which is to help you handle and respond to customers as quickly as possible with the right context.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And next question says, can you talk more about tagging or foldering systems, and what ways do companies tag emails?
Yeah, so I think the way that we think about it is tagging is about categorizing the messages that you're getting and then also prioritizing. So ways that companies use it is they like to categorize the content of the message. So understanding the different inquiries that they're getting. So it could be categorizing hot load or by, geo, it could be by a certain customer. That's all going to be super important to categorize. And then from there, it's also prioritizing. So maybe it's time-based. So in letting you know a message has come in 15 minutes and doesn't have a response. That's another way that the team can leverage that tagging when it comes to those time-based tags. So at the end of the day, really, it's going to be your option to decide how you want to categorize your emails and prioritize them. But we can give some great recommendations on, prioritizing messages that are more urgent, potentially have a higher dollar value tied to that email coming in based on the customer, based on, the content of that message. So that's a way that we generally use it.
I'll actually piggyback on that and stitch together 2 of our tactical pieces of advice in one here, which is if one of the goals of most logistics companies is to enable service by reducing the number of emails in their inbox, one way in which we can do that is through tags, because you're going to want to tag the most common things that come up, questions about quotes, questions about, shipment tracking, whatever it may be. And then what we do is we recommend that you take that data and you analyze it and understand the most common inquiries, understand how long they take to respond to, and figure out ways to either automate that away or handle it faster, which is, again, through our advice on analytics, right? And so tags are this sort of magical element that allow you to get the data that you need to actually operate more efficiently by reducing the amount of email load that you have.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. And next question for you. On the measurement side of things, what are the top metrics you see companies measure when it comes to email communication?
Yeah, so I'd say some of the top metrics that companies are measuring when it comes to email communication are going to be, one, the pure volume of emails that they're getting. So this is going to be a really good indicator of how business is going for certain channels. So top line, understanding the number of emails they're getting, the number of requests for quotes, the number of shipments, all of that is a key metric. And that's more business line metrics. Then also something that is really important is measuring individual performance too across the board. So some other key metrics would be how quickly each rep is responding to messages, how much each rep can handle per day. Are we reaching a threshold where our reps are getting overworked? So maybe we should hire additional reps. That's again, like the power of data that it provides for you. So team-based metrics are going to be really important on volume, and then individual metrics to understand performance. Top performers are some of the big things that I see teams measuring day in and day out, and having these readily available just allows them to be more data-driven long-term.
All right, perfect. And next question, email isn't the only way we communicate with customers. Do you have advice for managing and prioritizing live chat or SMS texts as well?
I can take that. Yeah, so front specifically is what we would call multi-channel. And so when we work with logistics companies, at least here domestically, email and phone are probably the most common channels that we'll see. As we work with more international clients, you start to see things like WhatsApp and SMS obviously pop up a little bit more as common channels for managing communications. And so our advice actually with live chat or SMS is to treat them almost the same as you would for email, just with a shorter time cycle, right? Because customers are only doing that if they're actually looking for a really urgent response. But the way of handling, like, how does this chat go to the right person, the right account manager, for example? How long should the SLA be? How should we respond with empathy, right? Like the way in which you respond shouldn't necessarily change as it goes channel to channel. Simply the speed differs. And one of our goals at Front obviously has been to try and get as many of these things into one platform as possible so that you don't have to switch between multiple apps just to respond to your customer.
All right, perfect. And we've got one more here we may have covered a little bit, but just in case you guys have any other thoughts, is there a way that other companies use to measure types of customer requests to be able to quantify and analyze those?
Yeah, so I can take that in a few ways. So, again, obviously we wouldn't be presenting here if this was a topic close to our heart, which is that companies will often tag conversations here directly in Front, but you can do that in any other email client. You can put it in a folder, or you can do whatever you need to categorize it. And then from there, the challenge becomes, how do you get that data out to analyze it? Some of our customers will do it, for example, directly in their CRM or ERP or a TMS. Other customers will, pick up an analytics tool, something like a Tableau, or a Looker to grab that data and find a way to put it into their BI tool. Again, we in Front have the analytics built directly into our app, so you don't have to do the integrations and do extra coding and extra analysis. But generally, you need to categorize, extract data, do analysis, and then maybe create a dashboard, which is something that we can help with directly.
All right, perfect. Just kind of taking a look at one more that I believe we've actually, let's see. All right, can Front consume chat or SMS information?
Yeah, that's something that we can consume. So again, David mentioned that Front was multi-channel. So that's one of the benefits, is that you can have all different mediums flowing through Front. Really, any ways that your customers are communicating with you, you can funnel through Front. Depending on the medium, it could be a native integration like chat. Website chat is something that Front does offer. But for SMS, we partner with Twilio. And then we always have the option of the open API and implementing any custom channels that you'd want to as well. But yeah, that's definitely something that's possible with Front and can be really a game changer to have all of your communication channels under one hood versus context switching between a few different platforms or potentially even your own phone just to communicate with customers. And it also gives visibility to leadership as well into all those different channels and seeing the volume of messages and, what has the highest conversion rate when it comes to, booking more business.
All right, perfect. And that looks like all of the questions that we've gotten. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen in. Thank you to Front for partnering with us on today's presentation. And thank you again so much to Riley and David for being here to share your insights and answer our audience questions today. We appreciate you guys being here and hope you'll join us again for another webinar very soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for
Appreciate it.
having us.
Yeah, of course. If there's any follow-up questions, we're always here. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.